Blue Ridge Hospice thrift shops are bigger and better than ever, with a new and expanded site at one of our 2 Winchester locations and our 6 well-established boutiques across the area. Blue Ridge Hospice thrift shops attract bargain hunters, treasure seekers, collectors, and antiquers. Mention this ad on your next shopping trip and receive a 10% discount. Blue Ridge Hospice thrift shops gratefully accept your donations, including electronics and furniture. For locations, hours, and information on how to donate, please visit blueridgehospice.org.
So what is Formula One, ladies and gentlemen? At the end of the day, it's just a sport where people go round and round in circles. Some people crash, Yuki Tsunoda makes an error, Lance Stroll disappoints, and at the end of it all, we get a great qualifying and Max Verstappen dominating. That's just Formula One. In the history books, the 2023 Canadian GP will come across as a very boring one. Verstappen leads...
Wait a minute. Did I just hear you say boring one? That was a very interesting introduction. But you just said the race was boring.
The history books would say that. Again, because at the end of the day...
okay.
At the end of the day, it looks like Verstappen dominated from start to finish, which is what happened. But let's be honest, that was a fun one, wasn't it? We got great racing at the end of the day. And what we essentially had was a masterpiece of sorts. But let's just actually analyze what really happened over there and why did Kunal impede me at the start? Why did you do that, Kunal? Why are you being so rude to me? You're going to get a 3-place grid penalty.
Well, you can return the favor to me next episode because that's similar to what Pierre Gasly and Carlos Sainz did, right? Sainz got impeded in Spain and then he returned the favor. He was like, you impede me at a circuit where they speak my language and I impede you back at a circuit where they speak your language.
Not bad.
I mean,
and you know the best part? Pierre Gasly and Alpine, actually, once they got that double penalty last weekend in Spain, they sat down, Kunal, for a 90-minute meeting to discuss how not to impede somebody and get a penalty like that. And guess what? The next weekend, they get impeded in Q1. It's beautiful. It's as if it's written in the stars.
But that is because the meeting after Spain was how not to impede. But the meeting didn't discuss how not to get impeded. If my sad humor makes any sense, but that's what we do. We have sad humor while we have great races, and we have fantastic humor when there are not so great races, which typically means most of our episodes are very humorous, especially in these dominant eras.
Oh no, but it might seem that way, but what a race we eventually had. We want to know what you thought of it as well, so you can use the poll feature if you're listening on Spotify to give us your opinion on the race. But personally, here at the Inside Line F1 podcast, we've got so many points to discuss with you. We're going to be talking about what Max Verstappen can't do and just why Sergio Perez is that slow. We're going to be talking about the amazing battles this weekend and just why did we see all of them? Why did Alex Albon finish where he did? And also a lot more on Lando Norris's unsportsmanlike behavior penalty. What is that even supposed to mean? What is unsportsmanlike behavior? So all of that and more is going to be a part of this episode of the Inside Line F1 podcast. Welcome along, folks. This is the Spanish... No, it's not the Spanish. It's the Canadian GP review. See, I made an error like George Russell, but I corrected it. I'm not crashing into the wall and retiring this episode. This will go on. But my name is Samal Arora. I'm the host of the Indian Racing League broadcast on Star Sports. Joining me as always is Kunal Shah, the former marketing head of the Sahara Force India Formula One team, and also is an FIA accredited F1 journalist for the Viaplay network. That was, I very nearly made it there, Kunal, quite like the drivers, because all the way through, every single one of them were flirting with the walls, and that is such a sight. Did you see that initial battle between Alonso, Hamilton and Russell when they were all three in the same train? And the way they were sliding with the walls, my God, that is why we watch Formula One.
And that is why the Canadian Grand Prix was also so epic. I mean, that whole battle, Hamilton being chased by Alonso, being chased by Russell, it was either going to be decided on track or in the pit lane, on the pit wall. It was all about 2 against 1 and, the usual things that we've seen. And I think Aston Martin would have been like, yeah, we would have sharpened our strategy tools, had we sort of been in the fight. But Fernando said, just leave it to me. I'm going to deal with it on track. I loved this whole banter they had on the Viaplay network. The reporter asked Hamilton, you got him at the start. And then he said, yeah, I did. And then Hamilton said, it's just age. His reflexes have slowed down. Of course, this was in good jest. And then Fernando said, I'll pay it back in Austria. And, it was an epic podium. 3 world champions on the grid, all 3 of them on the podium. And Adrian Newey, 200 wins in Formula One. I mean, just on the weekend when Max equaled Senna's record, Christian Horner went and told him, you need to win a few more because Adrian has 200 wins in Formula One.
My God, at this rate, it might probably still happen. Actually, you know what? I so badly want to talk about all the other battles, about Alonso versus Hamilton, about Magnussen versus De Vries, about Lando Norris's stupid penalty, in my opinion, and a lot more about Lance Stroll as well. But we just have to get Red Bull Racing out of the way, right? Because they just run away with every single race. Let's just actually give them that 1 minute of space, and then we can move to the good stuff. Because, Kunal, is there something that Max can't do at the moment in time? Anything? I think at this stage, he might as well drive the Formula 1 two-seater car with Kelly Piquet in the back and still might end up winning.
Well, I think one thing that Max couldn't do in Canada was top the drivers, driver of the day, fan voting, whatever thing. But I guess that's the least interesting thing that anyone could sort of be interested in. But it was so interesting. Max was driving around. He hit the wall. He laughed, ha, 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 that curb almost caught me out. And, that's how much ease with which he was driving. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Max Verstappen era. We've just come out of the Lewis Hamilton Mercedes era. We've enjoyed that history being made. Now it is time to sit back and enjoy history being made with Max Verstappen and Red Bull Racing. And like Lewis said, Max is very capable of winning his 103 wins record. I mean, come to think of it, that's like 60 plus more wins, but could it happen in the next 70 races? You never know. I mean, Red Bull has 18 wins in the last 19 races, right?
Sure. That's bad. But I for a second really want to talk about Sergio Perez, Kunal. It just doesn't add up. In the middle of the race, we were tracking his lap times, and he was consistently around 7/10, 1 second slower than Max, even though he was on the mediums when Max was on the hards. Yes, Checo was in the middle of a train that he shouldn't have been a part of in the first place. And yes, his tires were slightly older here or there. But 1 second off on an average? That just isn't right. And yet again, it's another qualifying when he's not out of not into Q3, basically, is where he is. That just is silly, in my opinion. And apparently it's because Sergio Perez has come out to the media and said that, hey, I'm trying to change my driving style. Now, to what he's changing it to is just all of our guess. I think definitely has to be something closer to what Max does, right? Because that's how you can extract the maximum out of the car. But whatever it is, Kunal, I think it's just costing him more than he's gaining at the moment. I think the biggest gap in history overturned has already been surpassed. Sergio has to pass overturn a 60, 70 point gap to win the title now? Surely that's going to happen, right? It's very, very, very possible. Definitely it is.
It is possible if Max Verstappen decides, to take a few breaks and be like, hey, I need some more competition. I need more drivers to sort of come in. But you asked a very interesting question. Is there something Max Verstappen cannot do? And I actually found an answer. He cannot, or he is not allowed to run at Nürburgring when Sebastian Vettel and Daniel Ricciardo actually take their old Red Bull Racing cars around the Nürburgring. And Helmut Marko turned around and said, guess what? My dear Max, you will take it to the max. So I will do my max to not let Max drive Max's Red Bull car at Nürburgring. I was trying to, you guys get the gist of what I was trying. But
One sec. I have to stop you there. I did the impeding part again, but no. Is it similar to rising number one of Formula One? One wonders what year would one win his first Formula One if one had to pick one.
I miss one Pablo Montoya just because we cannot make any Formula One jokes. I mean, his son Sebastian Montoya might race here, but Sebastian, Formula Sebastian doesn't make sense. We can just call him one Pablo Jr., so like Carlos Sainz Jr., just for fun's sake. But
one version 1.1? We're digressing too badly. We're digressing way too badly.
But
We should
banter
probably.
is what you get on our podcast, because banter is what we actually love watching Formula One for. And
Yeah.
I can't remember where exactly were we. We were at the Nürburgring, Max Verstappen. You cannot do that. But, Red Bull should actually flip it around. Max, you want to have a go at Nürburgring? Great. Go win the title before that. And then you can sit out the next many races if you'd like to.
But it's not just Helmut Marko that can put him in his place. Gianpiero Lambiase as well. Like, yep, thank you, Max. Go ahead and do your job. Like, put your head down. That's what he said on the radio. It's amazing. I think nobody else has that much control over Max Verstappen. Not even his dad at this stage, it feels. But
They should put GP in Perez's car, period.
Oh,
Then you'll find somebody who's able to match Max Verstappen, maybe even put him in his place. Like you said, of course, guys, I'm joking. GP is a former colleague from Force India. Now you hear him very calm, very composed, very direct, putting Max, in proportion, if that's the word to use. But I love their banter that sort of goes on the circuit. But I think, Samuel, that's enough of Max and Red Bull. 100 wins, congratulations, all 100 under Christian Horner, Adrian Newey, all of that. I mean, history is being made. Only 5 constructors have won 100 races, and the other 4. You don't even need me to read them out. It's easy to guess the historic ones.
yeah, exactly. But on the subject of Max, were you saying we've spoken enough on Max, or we've seen enough on Max in a broader sense? Because I think I really want Max to dominate at the top, because what that does is create such an epic battle at the back. Now, yesterday, from the day we're recording, we had this amazing event at Versova Social in Mumbai. Firstly, a huge thank you to all 20 of you who showed up. It was very, very late at night. So genuinely, it means the world to us that you showed up, even though tomorrow, the next day was a Monday, right? And so that's just a great commitment for you to make. And we really appreciate it from the bottom of our hearts. But for all of them who showed up, Kunal, they got a treat, because we got to see Lewis versus Fernando, a proper classic battle. And not just that, we got to see Russell in that battle as well. We got to see another incredible battle with Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. We got such a great one with Russell versus Albon, Albon versus Magnussen, De Vries versus Magnussen as well at the end of the day. Just so much great racing. And you mentioned to me while we were preparing for this episode that we had 2 major DRS trains, but none of those trains felt boring for even a minute. Just what changed suddenly for Canada that gave us such a great show and helped us enjoy so much at the live event that we had there?
Well, one of the things that happened was Nico Hülkenberg was massively out of place, right? He was P2, and then, of course, he got the penalty, which was very strange. He got a penalty for driving too slow under the red flag. Usually it's like the reverse, like, hey, you were too fast, and boom, penalty. And, people keep asking Hülkenberg about, hey, are you rusty? You've come back after 3 years of racing. Are you a little slow? Well, the truth is, he knows how to be fast, but he doesn't know how to be slow when he needs to be slow. So that's what caught him out. So it was, of course, a Hülkenberg train, which was, where he went backwards, Then it was the Albon train, where Albon actually went forwards. I mean, it was the most epic way to witness a Grand Prix, I would say.
Yeah. It's absurd, Kunal. Alex Albon, firstly, does not belong in the points, or does not belong in the 13th minute of any episode of the Inside Line F1 podcast, especially in a Williams. How? I know qualifying was incredible and they were able to maximize the long straights, but does it still baffle you? Because I have slept over it and I still can't imagine how he firstly got past Kevin Magnussen and Oscar Piastri. Yes, they both made mistakes, but to keep that position when he was consistently 7/10 slower than everyone around him, it just doesn't add up to me.
Well, I'll tell you what. I love Formula One without the DRS wing. We normally keep saying the Red Bull is so good. Just give them a Red Bull chassis. In the previous era, it was like the Mercedes engines are so good. Give everybody a Mercedes engine. I think in this era, we need to give everybody a Williams chassis and the Mercedes engine, or whatever that goes. Yeah.
Yes.
As slippery, low downforce, draggy, whatever you call it, is that. I mean, Albon for 30, 40 laps, whatever, kept DRS-enabled cars behind him To me, that was absolutely epic. I mean, he didn't even have to switch on the DRS to keep everybody behind him.
Yeah. And the one time he made an error, Kunal, he was immediately able to force the other driver back into an error so that he got the position, which was Oscar Piastri at the end of the day. I just love it. And even in his battle with George Russell, he was able to hold his nerve so well. And then, of course, things happened that helped Russell go past. And eventually, Russell retired. But we'll get to that in a second. But you're right. We should just give a Williams to everyone because low downforce means more exciting racing. And it's the same debate that people in MotoGP are also having, where they're just contemplating wings and looking at them and being like, do we really need them? Because without them, racing is just better. So let's just give everyone a Williams, Kunal.
And Samuel Williams knew that this circuit would aid them. They knew Albon would be the driver to bet on. Obviously, I'm not saying Sargent is bad, but Albon is just more experienced, right? So what did they do? They gave Albon the upgrades. Only Albon had the upgrades, right? And then the second is they actually took a new engine on Albon's car. So they basically, in their own words, threw everything they could at this weekend. And guess what? They scored points. They beat AlphaTauri to 9th place in the championship. And I think it's their 800th or 801st race. So also a milestone Grand Prix for Williams as a team, as a brand, as a legacy.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just curious to see what happens in Austria the next time out. Because remember, long straights over there as well. Lots of quick corners. And I wonder how the Williams will fare in that particular circuit. And also a couple of really slow ones too. So I'm just curious. And that means that when we have our live event for Austria in Mumbai as well, I think we should all just gather in, not to watch Max, but just to watch what Alex Albon particularly can do. Because I am a fan. But you know what I'm also a fan of, Kunal? I'm such a huge fan of Fernando Alonso faking things. Did you see his unsafe release drama over there? It was like a footballer diving because there was so much space for Lewis Hamilton to get into, but it felt like Alonso was just like, oh no, he hit me. But yeah, fair game.
Samuel, I'm going to actually just go back to Albon for one thing. If Checo Perez doesn't keep performing, we keep wondering, will they put Ricciardo in the car, etc., etc. And there are a lot of questions about Ricciardo for obvious reasons. I would just say they should put Alexander Albon back in the Red Bull. I mean, look at that guy. You get one opportunity like this, or one or two opportunities in the season. You grab them, you seize it, and you like, I'm going to wring everything out of the car and score all the points that I need to. I mean, remember, he's still half Thai. Red Bull is still half Thai. You never know if there are any backroom, conversations that end up saying, you know what, we need to give our boy one more chance, and so on, just so that. I mean, I'm just stirring up a controversy. I would love to see Ricciardo back. I would love to see Perez do his thing, but just wanted to do that. But you spoke Fernando Alonso, right? Very, very, very interesting how, leave it to me, it actually worked for him. He said he'll never have a single race in 2023 where he'll be off the podium. And guess what? He delivers first thing in after the next race in Canada. He was P2 last year. He didn't finish P2 last year. He was P2 this year. He actually finished P2 this year.
I love Fernando. I really do. And I just loved the mind games at the end where Fernando just had to lift off here and there. And I was just wondering, okay, but why? What is it? But he was able to make the tires last. And even with that brake issue that he was suffering at the end, he was calm as ever. In fact, he was pulling up time on Lewis Hamilton, which I find amazing. But again, I think we got one hint of the old Fernando Canal when he faked that unsafe release thing. I mean, we know for a fact that Fernando Alonso had so much space for Lewis to come in there. But he was like, we've got to give it a try at least. It's like a footballer diving. And I love the mind games. It's beautiful.
And this is what we watch Formula One for, right? I mean, drivers trying everything they can to force the opposition off, pressure them, force the stewards, all of that. I loved it. I loved Toto Wolff imitating Fernando. I don't think Toto can do it in the actual cockpit, so he said, why don't I just do it for the cameras and on the mic? It's easier for me to do that. And I don't know, could you call that unsportsmanlike? Well, we can go down that road later, but
no. Let's actually bring that up. Let's actually bring that up in a second, Kunal. I'm bursting with anger on that point.
we can, but that pit stop, Mercedes actually fumbled. They were 1 second slower than Aston Martin, and that's why Lewis was put in the position he was put in. But guess what? It made for great television. It gave us a glimpse of the old Fernando. I loved it. But yes, let's go on to Lando Norris, the most unsportsmanlike driver in Canada, because he was the only one to get the unsportsmanlike penalty, right?
Yeah, actually, even Max was unsportsmanlike, to be honest. He just didn't leave a chance for anyone. That's unfair. That's not right. Damn you, FIA, for not penalizing Max. No, but on a more serious note, just sorry, Kunal, but what does unsportsmanlike mean at the end of the day? I'm just curious.
I mean, when you do things to get an advantage, an unfair advantage, if that's the word to put it that way. I mean, and frankly, okay, let me put it this way. If Norris got an unsportsmanlike penalty for slowing down himself and hence everybody else in the pit lane, that's opening, the FI is opening a Pandora's box, because typically when a driver does that, oh my God, look at that. He's so smart. He needs more time, so he doesn't have to be stationary. He's holding himself back, and, spatial awareness. And, we go into those whole conversations.
Spatial awareness.
I'm using that for a reason. It's the cue to what's coming next, guys, right? But, we suddenly praise these drivers, and we've done that several times in history. And that's what Lando Norris said. If we go back in history, there are several drivers who will then deserve the same penalty for being unsportsmanlike, whatever, right? And let me just also go back. Since I said Pandora's box, I'm sort of opening it up again. 2016, Abu Dhabi, Lewis Hamilton slowing down Nico Rosberg, so Max Verstappen could attack him. And this was, title deciding race, last race of the season. If Lewis is able to slow Nico Rosberg in racing conditions on the racetrack, and then we don't call that unsportsmanlike. And mind you, it's not me. I'm not calling it unsportsmanlike. I believe in that old adage, winning the race at the slowest possible pace. And that's what, Lewis was trying to do at that time, right? So if that was not unsportsmanlike, where in real racing conditions, you're slowing somebody down, well, in a pit lane where you're already slow, why is it unsportsmanlike if you slow somebody down there? And again, this is where the FIA's inconsistencies can sort of show up. And I really hope they go back and say, we made a mistake. Drivers, please do all the cheeky things you can to get an advantage.
I mean, at one point, I get it, because eventually, if you allow it to happen, people will sort of take advantage of it in very extreme ways. But again, I don't think you can clamp that down as being unsportsmanlike. It's hardly. He's just trying to take advantage of a rule that exists. Because if that's the case, even spending more than your competitors in Formula One, Kunal, is unsportsmanlike. You're making it an unfair playing field, right? That's unfair. That's unsportsmanlike, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Then,
I mean, banging wheels while going wheel to wheel, not giving somebody space, or just giving enough space, or squeezing someone, all of those things are then unsportsmanlike. I mean, now that we are expanding on unsportsmanlike, so I really think they should, FIA should turn up and say, guys, we screwed up. Not that they ever do that, but that's just where we are with this whole unsportsmanlike conversation, I would say.
Oh, no. They'll come back at the start of the next race saying that, hey, we'll come back with the report. Then 2 weeks later, they'll come back with another report that says, hey, we fucked up. Wait, I wasn't meant to say that. But yeah, we messed up. And we're not going to correct it because it's not our fault. We made a mistake, but it's not a mistake. But it's not our fault. But we're not going to correct it. So I just don't get it. Hey, by the way, shouldn't cutting the curb also be unsportsmanlike, Kunal, technically?
Oh, boy, Samal. Let's move on. What's next? Are we moving on to spatial awareness? I'm itching to talk about that.
Actually, before we get to spatial awareness, let's actually put this as well. Is also having a flexi rear wing unsportsmanlike? Because Esteban Ocon had that.
Oh boy. That was interesting. That flexi rear wing. I mean, Alpine was like, everybody has flexing front wings. Let us show the world and Laura Rossi how we can have a flexible rear wing. And that was very interesting physics at play, because every time he was braking, every time he was going through the curbs, the wing was flexing because it had no load on it at that time. But every time Esteban Ocon picked up speed and there was aero load and pressure, that wing was as stable as it could have ever been on television. And, Lando Norris joked post-race saying, after I saw it, I was sort of ducking in my cockpit a little more just in case that thing flew off. I mean, we either expected it to fly off, which thankfully it didn't, because that could have been dangerous, or we thought the FIA will offer some sort of a flag or penalty or something. But well, it's, crossed, it has passed post-race scrutineering as well. And is this where Adrian Newey turns up and says, I can make my rear wings flex. You watch me, guys. And that's
Oh
what's
my
coming
God.
up in next Red Bull upgrade, and Red Bull's next upgrade. And then they will also write saying, we saw Canada 2023 Alpine Flex, so we have flexi wings now. And,
Oh God.
I'm going to offer this thing, Adrian Newey, 200 wins, number of championships, etc. Legend. He was standing. Now, guys, remember the pit lane opens and closes 10 minutes earlier. So usually it was, 20 past the hour to, 30 past the hour. And now it's 10 past the hour to 20 past the hour. So Adrian Newey gets 10 more minutes on the start grid. He was literally just standing and staring at every car on the grid with his pen, pencil, I don't know what it was. And I could see it was a white notebook. And I was just like, wow, that's the best job in the world, to just sit and stare at Formula One cars.
We do that too as well. We just don't get paid half as much. Yeah, it's unsportsmanlike from Red Bull not to hire us. No, but all the jokes aside, really, it's just amazing to see the guy and how raw his passion is. It's outstanding when you can get to see, and it's amazing to have him at the race weekends, because every now and then, after every dramatic Red Bull event, you can pan the camera to Adrian Newey and he'll be doing nothing. Just same expression all the time. It's beautiful. But actually, before we get to all the other stuff, and before we also get to chat a lot more about the spatial awareness, we need to actually first get to some more context of the race from a numbers perspective. And so for that, we have F1 Stats Guru with his post-race review of the stats of the race. Let's go. Welcome back in, folks, to the Inside Line F1 podcast. That, ladies and gentlemen, was F1 Stats Guru with his post-race stats review. And we now have to talk a lot about Ferrari and also George Russell. But before we do that, let's talk about spatial awareness, Kunal. George Russell apparently has great spatial awareness. His F1 game rating is 83, as far as I'm aware. He did a good job, but I just don't get how Kevin Magnussen, who made the absolute worst move I've seen so far this season on Nick de Vries, gets an 85 awareness rating. I mean, where was the space?
Samuel, I think by the end of this season, well, actually, that's too late, but by the end of the next 2 or 3 races, you would have memorized that whole table of which driver has how many points in which part of awareness, racing, experience, speed, whatever those metrics are. We could wake you at 2 a.m. saying, Samuel, wake up. What is Yuki Tsunoda's blah, blah, blah rating? And you'll be like, 73, and you'll go back to sleep. There's a good chance you'll do that. But George Russell, spatial awareness, I can't remember my English pronunciation. But I noticed you and I are doing different things, but that's good because we have different setups anyway, even though we are teammates on the podcast, right? But he was so spatially aware that he could hit the wall, have what we thought was a suspension failure, but turned out to be just a wheel rim and a knocked out thing, and go back to the pits and get it fixed and run in the top 8. That was incredible for me. But Samuel, also a note to how strong these cars were. We saw all of them. I'm exaggerating. We probably all of them did hit the wall at some point, but we saw some of them, especially in the top, hit the wall. But these cars could withstand those hits. Yes. I mean, a few years ago, we were just seeing everything just flying over, including like the smallest nut and bolt would just be all over the circuit, right? And then Max Verstappen, he hit a bird, and he still finished the race. He won. One of his brake ducts actually had a bird stuck, and he still won by 10 seconds. So hats off to these tanks that the FIA has got the teams to build via the regulations. But there we are. But you also mentioned Magnussen and de Vries, and to me that was interesting because Russell made a good point of that and sort of overtook 2 cars in one corner, which was great. But Nick de Vries was doing what they probably do in Formula E. Exactly. I don't know. It was like, I won't make the corner, but I'll make sure you don't make the corner either. Let's just go down the escape route.
I mean, when they say he has experience, I don't know what experience they were talking about, because that looked like a rookie error. We have that ancient saying, right? Your mom will always tell you, hey, if your friend will go and jump into a well, will you follow him as well? I think Nick de Prix was doing precisely that. If I don't make the corner, you don't make it as well, my friend. But it's funny, Kunal, on Kevin Magnussen, before we get to Ferrari for a second, I really want to talk about how just a couple of minutes ago, before this whole incident, I literally made a note in my notebook saying that, hey, Kevin Magnussen's actually maturing. When his team told him to drop a position because of, again, an unfair move that he made, he just reacted normally and said, okay, I'll do it. I thought, wow, 5 years ago, Kevin Magnussen would have rioted at that. He would have complained on the radio, made a total fuss of it. I thought for a second he was getting mature. 5 laps later, and he ends up making that move. Like, where was the space, my friend? Did you... Honestly, does that even count, Kunal? Does that move even count in any way whatsoever?
It counts under the unsportsmanlike behavior on track. Just
Here
that.
we go. Here we go. Oh, boy.
But incredible. And George Russell also had a funny moment in qualifying because he actually turned out to one of the Viaplay reporters and said, today there was real rain. It was not just my sweat. So 100% for spatial awareness. Or did I just change the way I pronounce it? I don't know. But yeah, there we go.
Spatial awareness. I think that's the point where people start to tune away. So it's just to make sure that they don't, let's talk about Ferrari because I think, Kunal, sorry, but we're bad people. Honestly, I really think we're not very nice as human beings. We've criticized Ferrari a lot. They've really done some terrible, terrible stuff. We've really said some bad stuff to them about when they have a bad day. But the one time they've had a good day, it's taken us how many minutes? 35, 36 odd minutes to chat about them?
31 minutes to be precise, since we go all unedited.
We're horrible people. We're horrible people. Sorry. But
well, they took time to come good this weekend as well, right? They weren't great on Saturday. Usually the day when they shine, they weren't good on Saturday. They waited till the second half of the race on Sunday to come good, and the two halves being the safety car halves, right? So we are okay with a 31-minute entry for Ferrari. I mean, I love that they have, for once they had strategy that worked, and they probably knew that. So they said, guess what? We're going to have new cryptic terms on the radio so nobody guesses what our strategy is. Like, we heard things like switch red, and something like Mordex.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Carlos Sainz, typically saying, no, guys, we're going to go longer. And very interestingly, he said the driver is also a sensor in the car. In fact, it's one of the most important sensors in the car. And that's why he's so happy with being the team's strategist while in the car. And this is the same team that in Q2 refused to give Leclerc the softs, if you remember.
That's all? Are we just going to say that much about Ferrari?
No, we can add. We can add one more.
Actually, I've got something really exciting to talk about with them.
Go on.
You mentioned something so interesting about Carlos Sainz resisting. He still didn't had confidence, and somehow for once it's actually ended up working. But again, as you mentioned, it was not a proper great Ferrari weekend as well, because they had the silly impeding penalty. And I think we should actually start tracking how many impeding penalties each driver has, because I'm pretty sure that this is not Carlos Sainz's first. I think he got one in Monaco as well. So clearly something's really working out very well at that team.
Well, they have to show that things are working, because they really need to hold on to Leclerc. I mean, every couple of weekends. And look at it this way: we suddenly have a fortnight's break to Austria, and there is going to be, could Aston Martin go and sign up Leclerc because Ferrari, whatever, and Leclerc, of course, said it was a very track-specific performance that we had. But I loved how Ferrari also told Leclerc 2 times in the race, Sainz will not attack you. Sainz will not attack you. Which, in my interpretation is that if Leclerc was anyway quick enough, Sainz wouldn't have been able to attack him. But was Ferrari's way of saying, dude, don't worry, Sainz is quicker than you, but he won't attack you. So was that something that we could take as a team? Didn't mean to imply, but did end up implying? I don't know. I'm just complicating our lives by saying that. But yeah, Ferrari, that's where we are. We need to talk of Lance Stroll, Sommel. I mean, very, very crucial. He deserves to be spoken to at the very last, because sometimes I just guess that people don't end up thinking we are too serious about him, or we are making too much fun of him. But frankly, we are almost always making fun of him.
Are, he was amazing this weekend, Kunal. I really think he was. He had his old grandstand as well. People were really cheering on for him. He did a great job. And he actually gave us, Kunal, the moment of the entire weekend. Have you played your F1 games quite a fair bit usually? Are you big on them?
Well, not anymore. When I was way younger, I was always on the simulator. There was GP3, and then there was a managerial game and the likes. But
Huh.
no, now it's just F1 content everywhere all the time, and written on Twitter, audio and video with you, and then the television stuff. So no, but
Fair,
where are you
fair.
going with this? Yeah.
But you definitely right. If you have played a racing game, you know of that phenomenon where you just wait at the pit lane entry and then you push the AI cars into the pit lane deliberately and make them slow down. Because again, the AI is designed to go super slow in the pit lane. So once you do that, they just get stuck up at a speed limit of 60 and they keep on slowing and ragdolling along over there. And I, for a second, really thought that this was a replication of one of those utter crap moments in real life. But it turns out Aston Martin were actually there to pit him. So my dream for that moment to actually happen in real life has been ruined, which is a shame. But hey, Lance Stroll didn't disappoint in many other ways as well. Do you know what, Kunal? I hear a lot of people actually going out there and saying Stroll isn't performing, he isn't delivering. Look at the points. I mean, there's such a huge delta. Out of the 150 odd points that Aston Martin has, Stroll has only 37 and Alonso has 117 or something of that sort. But I think he's the biggest contributor to the team anyway. I still think so.
Yeah. You got to explain why. Is he? I think I know where this is going, because had it not been for Stroll or Lance, Lawrence wouldn't have bought the team, and then Aston Martin wouldn't have happened, and then Force India would have just been shut down as Force India, I guess.
Yeah,
No
but
other person would have bought the team, or at least the Mazepins may would have bought it, but I'm not going down that road.
but yeah, I really feel that all of us F1 fans who tend to criticize Lance Stroll, just we don't see the big picture well enough, do we, Kunal? We're just sort of restricted a little bit. But
You
yeah,
mean we lack spatial awareness as well, or?
oh boy, here we go again. No, it's how much did Stroll entertain you this weekend, Kunal? Because I had a jolly good time watching his lap times and just being amazed at how. I mean, I was disappointed by Sergio Perez and how slow his lap times were. I was just having fun when Lance Stroll wasn't quite able to put those lap times. It was hilarious.
Yeah, well, it all depends how we evaluate his performance, because he, in the fourth fastest car, wasn't in Q3 again. I mean, if we can pile on to Checo Perez for missing Q3 for 3 consecutive times in the most dominant car on the grid, here's the second most car, unless we flip the equation and we say it's actually an eighth fastest car. I read this on Twitter somewhere. Aston Martin is an eighth fastest car, but Fernando, knowing that he always outscores the package, he's finished second in an eighth fastest car. We could also flip that whole narrative around and see how that goes. But Lance Stroll, I mean, he blamed the safety car, saying we pitted and then the safety car came out again. And okay, so be it, right? And I don't know. I mean, he's just happy driving around and, not talking to media or talking like he deserves to be there. I haven't heard complaints of people who actually sat in the Lance Stroll grandstand if the experience was as good as bad as most of the other grandstands. But I like that whole pit lane thing where you sort of got pushed in. And, he was practicing that pit lane entry all weekend, because I think in one of the free practice sessions, Lance was so obsessed with the number 18 that he was 18 kilometers per hour over the pit lane speed limit. So speed limit was 80. Lance was at 97.8. And, we are in the process of rounding off numbers, right? Had he been 18 or 17.8, he would have still paid the €1,000 that he did, which was like loose change. But I am going to read out some snippets from qualifying. I had some really interesting ones. Oscar Piastri crashed in Q3, came to a Viaplay reporter and was asked, hey, guess what happened there? Oscar said, well, I hit the wall. And then he burst out laughing, saying, I just did a Kimi Räikkönen there. And I actually, he really did that. Then, Yuki Tsunoda was asked in the build-up to the weekend, hey, Yuki, what's the plan this weekend? And he said, my plan is to be fast between the grass. Again, a very Kimi Räikkönen-ish weekend, right? And Nico Hulkenberg, he had that penalty, which is why he didn't start on the front row. But I was a bit too bummed because post qualifying, he was asked, Nico, what's your plan into turn one with Max Verstappen? Nico said, I'm going for fame into turn one. Okay. I would have loved that. And, then Nico, of course, said, my aim is to finish anywhere between P1 and P10, which is also an interesting way to look at it. As long as I get points. And last but not the least, it's the driver who finished or is last in the Drivers' Championship. I loved how Logan Sargent, or I'll flip it, Sergeant Logan was given a command by the Williams pit wall to say, Sergeant Logan, you got to park your car next to a marshal spot. Marshal is also a term used by the armed forces, and that's what Sergeant Logan did. He went and he parked it so nicely that he could get out of the car, they wheeled it back, and the virtual safety car was there for all of 7 corners, maybe.
Yeah, that's the fastest VSC I've ever seen in my life. That just came and went. So I was like, hey, is something going to happen now? But yeah, that was a little interesting. But let's hope we get this level of drama all the way through, especially for Austria. And if that happens, it'll be so amazing to watch the race live with all of you folks. So if you are in Mumbai, stay tuned to all of our social media channels because we're going to be announcing where that event happens. And so check out the link in the description for more information. But we can't wait to watch that race with you and also discuss the sport with our pre and post-race interaction as well. So just keep tracking our social media. We'll be back with more. And firstly, thank you for listening to the Inside Line F1 podcast. In case you liked what you heard, again, feel free to leave a subscribe and also to share this podcast with other friends and family members who might really enjoy this. But for now, folks, I think it's goodbye. And we're going to be meeting rather soon, aren't we, for the Austrian GP. So stay tuned then. We'll be back. Take care. Bye-bye.
An important message from Blue Ridge Hospice. There may be several hospices now claiming to serve the area, but Blue Ridge Hospice is the only local hospice that has been serving here for 40 plus years, operates the only hospice inpatient care center, conducts the only community-wide grief and bereavement programs, offers a nationally recognized music therapy program in conjunction with Shenandoah University, outscores every other Virginia hospice in Medicare's quality scores, and so much more. Blue Ridge Hospice, the first, the best. Find out more at blueridgehospice.org.